Order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Items for discussion and consideration. First item is providing the proper equipment for sports sponsored by the city. I think, Mark, you went ahead and initiated this?
I initiated and submitted. I did a lot of investigation on this too, talking to the different employees here, along with Nicole, finding out issues, what's happening and all that. I believe the reason this came up is we support machine pitch softball team, okay? And what happened is the boys team came to us actually at one of the meetings talking about it. And when I went out to research it, the mayor was out there the one Saturday with me. The girls team came up right afterwards too. Now you're talking about 7-year-old girls going up, getting on the team for a first time, and then not being able to use a pitching machine, you know, that we're supporting that type of machine, and walking into a league and then seeing a ball thrown in them, which scared them to death. I mean, some of the girls were just frightened. So the thing is, with the cost of the machine and everything else, my ideal, and take a weigh in for everybody else, would be that we go ahead and also with my research with other cities is some cities started doing it, now they're stopping it. It's a hassle, it's employees getting it, that we go to a system where other cities has, where we have a permanent pitching machine in the batting cage that is signed out with a liability letter by the coach. Would they have to sign off on a liability letter? They have the code to open it up, let it use for their team, and then lock it back up when they're done. And it'd be on a schedule basis. That would also cost money for the city, which is not in the budget for this year. So my proposal would be that we come up with the cost of this, what it would cost to put that in, reach out even if we can get any more donations from everybody. I know we milked a lot of them dry building these things and all that, but I think it's something we ought to provide for these teams if we're going to sponsor them, and that we figure out the cost and put it in the budget for next year.
Okay, now, so yeah, go ahead. You want to take it? Because we did some research too, and James has got some information.
So I think, I think the Alderman brought up an excellent point. One of the things that I think was requested of the city was that we would release the machines or check them out and not keep them stationary. And I think, as the Alderman said, that there's a few communities that have tried that. It ended badly. The machines are expensive, they're heavy, and they get damaged. But certainly, we've started to explore the option, and I think the staff supports the idea of budgeting for the option. And we set it up like St. Louis, budgeting for having an option for either hand pitch with the screen, which we use now in those batting cages, or building or purchasing a small, essentially be like a tough shed, is basically what Lake St. Louis has, that would house pitching machines that, again, we would have controlled specifically by authorized individuals. Those would remain fixed. They would remain, we wouldn't allow them to be moved or tinkered with. They just turn it on, put the ball in, etc. And that would be by people who've signed waivers and responsible folks. I think that is the route that the staff has suggested as the best way to go, considering the research we've done as well, that Alderman Johnson has also done. In the meantime, as a stopgap measure, the staff did reach out to, and forgive me, I don't have the name of the company. It's right there at Tara and Bryan on the other side of 70. There's a batting cage facility there. that is giving us huge discounts for our teams to go over there and get batting cage time with their machines. So we do have kind of a stopgap measure that is going to be, it's currently being utilized now that we've reached out to our teams and our coaches to tell them about it. We think that's going to work for the time being until we plan for and then fund any permanent changes if that's the board's will. So I don't think it's an emergency at this moment. I think, as the Alderman said, we can put it in the budget for next year. We can certainly start planning on the logistics of that and getting that ready for early next year construction and being ready for the spring season.
And the teams are very excited with the discount that they're receiving now. I mean, they even got parents on the team forking up for a day, and they're getting them for like $20 now.
An hour.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
$20 an hour.
so the parents are actually kicking in,
Uh,
which is great.
So when I was out there that Saturday morning and we talked to the parents, and we said that to set it up, and we showed that it was pretty heavy,
Yes.
okay? And the one guy, he was struggling to get it out there. So we said that we would have our staff, park staff person come out and set it up, pre-set it up for them, but for a fee, for them to come in on Saturday, their off time. They said that they would do it for, time and a half is what they requested, which would be about $35 an hour.
Yeah, I mean, if you put in benefits and taxes and everything else, I mean, closer to $40 an hour.
$40 an hour.
Right.
So, and they
it's-
said they were okay with that.
but that's not feasible in the long run.
Why? I mean,
It
Well,
gets expensive and it's a lot of work and
Yeah.
the use of the machines like that, and it's just now you're scheduling employees to do things and stuff, and then you got the problem of the wear and tear on the machines.
yeah,
If they get abused and all that, who's taking responsibility for it?
right.
I think down the line, the ideal way is to set up a permanent one, and the people that get access to it signs a waiver off, and they're accept responsibility for it. And it takes away the burden of doing it that way.
I have a question. We do have batting cages,
Yes.
and that's for parents.
Right. We have screens in there so they don't get hit.
No, I know, I agree.
Yeah.
So you're suggesting to add that to the batting cages in the back?
Well,
Or-
and as I said in the beginning, it's a pitching machine league.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're throwing the ball from the pitching machine.
Well, I agree.
And especially the young girls, they were scared to death. The first game they came to, they hadn't seen a pitching machine. They walked up to it and ran off the field.
No, I
You
get it.
know,
No,
So,
I get it. I was there.
if we're gonna support that type of league, I think we ought to provide the equipment for them to practice with also.
Oh, no, I'm agreeing with you. I
Oh.
just don't know, I'm trying to visualize where we can put it to keep it, that's all I'm saying.
It would be a hut wheel would be built. It'd be
Okay.
permanent in a weathered hut that would be put up. Yeah.
I'd be happy to put together some numbers as far as potential costs. Luckily, last year, so I actually pulled up our meeting notes from February 16th of last year, when we built this, or when we just talked about building this. An asterisk next to Justin Ungerbach does not want machines. That was the consensus. But we did, just because we thought there might be a change in the future, we did have it wired. So we do have electricity out there, which is good. All we really need at this point. So if somebody wants to put a machine in there, they could. But obviously that would be on a temporary basis. We're talking about, and I think what Alderman Johnson has suggested is the best option, is the addition of some sort of a hut, much like Lake St. Louis, be outside the batting cage. We would make an entry into the batting cage, and the hut would be able to have like a flip down window that, the coach would go in there and turn on the machine and drop the balls in. There wouldn't be a lot of moving or calibrating the machines. That's part of the problem now. Lake St. Louis did experiment with what we were talking about, having, people use them early in the season. They broke them, they were uncalibrated, the wheels needed to be maintained and sanded because they were getting gunked up. The control panels were getting broke about once a week, which are about $100 a piece. So, you know, they said it was a much better deal just to leave them in the batting cages and go with that. And I think that would probably be the most prudent way to go about it for us. Those machines are about $2,000 a piece. And like I said, it's wired for it. We really just need to put a housing out there, and then probably buy a couple new machines that we'll use for the leagues, and then we'll cycle out some of the older ones to put in there.
When you say housing, and maybe I missed this, you're talking about a housing, converting the end of one of those
It would
existing
be,
batting
it'd be
cages.
outside of the cage. So we would have to make an entry into the cage.
Why not leave it stationary in the cage so that no one has to touch it? They just walk up and turn it on at the control panel and use it.
It would stay that way, but in the cage, it would still be exposed to the elements. Unless we built something inside the cage, which then we kind of take away the opportunity for the pitch, the batting cage with the pitch. So
Right. Okay.
So we're
I
just
think
trying to make, since it wasn't originally designed for both, we're gonna have to kind of not redesign it. We're just going to have to go outside of the current length to make that work.
Okay.
Okay, so
So
James, you got an action to get some
We'll get some
numbers.
We'll get a sketch.
Put
We'll
it
get a
in our-
plan. We'll get some numbers, and we'll put it in the budget. And then I'll get an estimate for when it would take to actually get it completed, so we can get it done before the spring ball season.
Okay, our next item, political activities by city employees. This is a policy change, I believe. You want to take it, John? Or is it highlighted, or? Okay, all right,
I'm good for input because
Yeah.
the board is
Sure.
discussed and.
Yeah.
So, board might recall that during the election this past year, there had been conversations and concerns about some of the electioneering and activities that was suspected of potentially staff being involved in. Of course, after examination, there was no indication or no proof shown of that. That being said, we do want to make sure that it is explicitly clear to both our staff and to the residents that this is not something that the staff involves themselves in any way, shape, or form. In many communities, it is explicit in their code, which is what I had asked for, to make sure that we have a code that covers those kinds of activities. And there was also conversation about the elected officials engaging in their official capacity also. We turned over all of those ideas to our city attorney, who was able to put together what we think is a constitutionally, the constitutional speech is still protected and still gets the job done from what the intent was, which was to limit staff members from participating in political activities here in the city of Dardenne Prairie, especially in their official capacity. So that's what we have before us this evening. I know that that was sent out, I think, last Friday, so we're happy to entertain any questions or concerns.
Everybody had time to look it over?
Is there a copy of it in our packet?
Yes.
Should be.
Yes.
Yep.
Bill 2424?
Yeah, 24. I think originally there was some, again, the city attorney did make sure that, I think my original request might have been a little too strict. There was obviously wanted to make sure that constitutional rights were protected by of staff members as well, but not speaking for John, but I think this is probably mirrors what most communities would enforce. Is that a fair statement, John?
Correct.
Okay.
So I just have a comment, because I just have a comment, because when we talked about this before, I was mentioning that I receive a W-2. Does that make me having to be like a city employee? And we were told no, we're elected officials. But does it explicitly address that? I see where it says employment of elected officials and interference with administration. But that would be my concern, is to make sure that it was clear that the aldermen were not subject to the permitted political activities that they have listed.
I can tell you definitively.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on, fulfillment of sunshine request. I think, Mike, you brought this up?
Yeah, I wanted to take up the issue of how we fulfill sunshine requests that come into the city. I think for two reasons. One's efficiency, and one is to stay above any appearance of impropriety. My understanding is right now there are requests that when the sunshine request comes in, the subject of that request is asked to fulfill the request. And as a separation of duties and just to make sure that we are putting the proper controls in place, I wanted to recommend a policy in which, at least where possible, a third party is fulfilling any kind of searches for sunshine requests. I think we have, especially when it comes to email or anything stored in the Office 365 environment, our IT group can do that pretty easily through the administrative console on Office 365. But then, of course, any other documentation that may be held by a person, asking them to fulfill the sunshine request that may reveal any kind of incriminating information against that individual might provide some conflicts. So just making sure that we are being complete and fair with how we do our sunshine requests.
So are we asking for a third party to come in and search through physical files as well?
Not right this second. That's not, I'd like to listen to the thoughts of any of the other board members. Specifically, low-hanging fruit right now would be those electronic records.
I would think that sounds like a solid policy, because you don't want to have the appearance that it's not transparent and it's not above board.
Maybe we can ask the city attorney his experience with other cities, what, if any, experience with other cities as far as physical records and how those are.
Well, can I ask a question before you answer that question? What is the process now? I'm sorry, I don't know
As far as the process, the city clerk is supposed to handle all requests. How she handles them is what we're, I guess, considering.
Sorry, I didn't know.
So I received a request recently for email correspondence. And typically, I looked back today, I was just on CASA. I looked back today, we've had 3 requests over the last 10 years for email correspondence. So I just sent the individual who they were wanting the records from, an email saying, can you provide me with all records related to this response? Currently, if I receive a request for email correspondence, which I've only received 3 in the last 10 years, I typically send that request to the individual who is being requested of the documents and ask them to provide me any records related to that request.
Thank you.
And you're saying that you don't think that that's being done, or the person's responding?
Well, regardless of any specifics here, just if that situation arises in the future where, I'll use myself as an example. Say I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing, or I did something in email that didn't come across as a positive thing for the city, and a resident finds out about it and says, hey, I need that sunshine request. If I'm supposed to be fulfilling it, I go, well, here's 10 emails. These 3 look pretty bad. I'm not going to send those. Here's 7. And
Okay,
just to
so
avoid
then-
that for in the future.
So do we have an IT person then here that would be
We can have our IT consultant
Could-
do any kind of word search for
Right,
emails in our system.
those, okay. So that's what you're looking for.
Right, yeah.
Okay. I
So
just
something,
wanna-
just being more
I want
objective.
to clarify where we're going with this
Right.
and what we're doing with it. And that shouldn't be that expensive. I mean, he could just put in keywords and pull up.
It's easier than that in Office.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I
yeah,
mean,
so the
I
way
do it
a-
myself to find my own emails.
Well, the way that a sunshine request is constructed with, between these dates, I need these things, these words, or this email, there's actually, it's called e-discovery or compliance search, where you just plug that information in and it'll search
Right.
based on your parameters. So it's very commonly used.
And so I'd have to go back to you, John, now, since you didn't get the answer earlier. Just kidding. Yeah, I understand where you're going, but I like the cookies. So. What do other cities, how do they handle those type of situations?
Well, every city has different
Different.
capabilities, but it was very common to do something like this. Similar to what
And how difficult, is there anything we have to go through on how that is handled, or we just put that in as a policy?
We just put just the policy. Yeah.
we do. Policy or something like
Mhm.
Do we need a motion to do that in regular session, or how does that work?
I mean,
It's,
it's the board's prerogative how they wish to memorialize this. I mean, it really is, I think as John, as the attorney said, that it's really just a directive to the city clerk to fulfill her duties in that, in that manner. So whether we want to do this as a resolution, put it in an ordinance, whatever you want to do, or just tell him that is the expectation, going forward.
I mean, if we just have it documented here as expectation going forward, that's enough to suffice.
that. I think a directive from the board was
Right.
And would that be just a voice statement and a concurrence, or does that need to be a resolution? What's your thoughts?
A motion and a vote on the board this evening.
And does that need to be on the agenda,
It is
on the agenda.
regular session?
Oh, we can do it in a work session.
Oh, we can do it in the work
Because
session.
because it is an item for discussion for consideration.
Okay,
so-
I thought you were saying it needs to be the regular.
Oh,
meeting.
right now it's fine.
Okay, perfect. So I guess I'll make a motion. Move to ask the city clerk to fulfill sunshine requests in the, without the participation wherever possible of the subject of that sunshine request, and utilize our IT group to run searches on electronic records when possible.
Can I
Sure.
go back and ask, so again, so under that, you're going to have someone else come in and root through files they're not familiar with, because you're not saying just emails or electronic documents here. You're saying where possible, it is possible at any given time for Kim to just not ask Todd where something is for planning and zoning. She can go down through the thousands and thousands of pages of engineering files for something. So, I mean, I would make sure you tailor it to what you're really looking for, because,
She can ask you,
what's that?
she can ask you to go through it.
Where all the 20 years of stuff that I inherited in my office, she wants to come through that, so.
Well, what I would say is in terms of electronic documents, it's very specific physical documents.
Yeah.
is very common. But
Okay. Then let me amend my motion. I'll say for sunshine requests for electronic documents as far as is technically possible, utilizing our third-party IT organization to conduct that search without the involvement of the subject of the search. That be, does that get the Young seal of approval?
Well, I mean, I guess you say the subject of the search. I mean, everything that you're saying really is about emails, because
Or files within OneDrive or SharePoint or,
But those aren't the subject of, the search subject is not James or Todd or engineering. If you're
okay.
looking for like a plan, you know what I'm saying?
Then strike the last, strike the last part. Any sunshine request for electronic documentation, as far as technically possible, request those conducted by our third-party IT organization. That good? Okay, then that will be my motion.
Okay.
I second.
Got a motion on the floor to change our request,
It's just to direct Kim to do that.
correct? Do as Mike stated. Do you have the language, or we can't go back and listen to the tape?
We'll have it
Yep.
in minutes.
Got a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion approved. Okay, moving on, staff communications. City attorney,
I have nothing.
city engineer.
Yes. So in the report here, but the things to highlight, we've been working with Cedarstone on that development with right-of-way issue, making sure we have proper right-of-way on that side. We've been going back and forth a little bit. I think we've got a good system. We had to have them amend some of their language on the record plat for including some of that area down by the creek as easement, not just common ground, but common ground and easement. So when we do extend that box culvert, we won't have to go back to anybody. We think we got the grades worked out pretty well too with the developer on that side to make sure that shared use trail is kind of going to match what we need to match on the road. So we've done some due diligence on that. Even though we haven't officially started on the design for post, we've been working with the developer on that issue. That's obviously a big issue in the future. And a lot of communication with the road board over the last month. And tomorrow, I believe we have a progress meeting with contractor on Stump Road.
Right.
you,
Hopefully they'll
Mayor.
have some numbers for us for speed abatement. They're supposed to bring us some numbers for. So,
We're going to talk about that.
Cool. Okay.
So I'm up next.
Yeah.
So, yes, they would like, so in order to come up with those numbers, nobody's doing it for free. So, yes, they got back to us, but we're going to have to talk about payment to come up with an
Engineering.
engineering,
E.
plan for some sort of changes to making. We've had multiple conversations about different things that could be implemented. Again, problem is that we don't know if or what is the problem that we're trying to abate. Current data does not show there to be a statistically significant problem. If we decide to do, there are lots of different options, as Tom has talked about before, that we could implement, and all of those have widely varying costs. And so to give somebody a real idea of what is a realistic tool to put into place and the cost would take some billable hours for them. Now, I think Tom's mentioned before, and I know that we do have, seen it in many other communities, they have, I don't want to call it aftermarket, but after construction options like speed humps or speed tables that can be bolted down and added to the roadway post-construction, especially if there is a concern or something that is found to be a speeding concern. So I think those are options, and I think we know. I think Tom mentioned before we're talking about the $20,000 plus range per.
Yeah, the rubberized, both
rubberized
speed
ones.
humps, speed table might be a little bit much needed here, a little bit maybe overkill, but typical speed hump might be, it's about a 12-foot wide piece. It's sectional rubber. Potentially Phil and his crew with maybe some assistance from another folk or two to help with traffic control. Something like that could be laid out and put down after the project's done. Again, if you're looking for a permanent solution, then now's the time to do it, if that's what's deemed needed or necessary.
So
If you're looking for a trial and maybe something that you can move from street to street, then the other communities we've worked with, they do a rubberized trial. They just determine that that's what they want with that particular piece of rubber bolted down. They remove that rubber, they replace it with what that hard asphalt and or concrete is as a permanent improvement. They move on to another street using that rubberized. It's a very durable material, can be reused, unbolted, bolted, so it's not like it's something, if you all decided to invest in a semi-permanent or temporary, it could be reused other places if it's determined that that's not the fit at Stump Road. If it is the fit at Stump Road, and that it's well received by everyone and everybody's happy, then at a later date that could become permanent, whether,
What's the cost of one?
well, again, the big speed humps
Just
are,
ballpark.
probably just the material cost, probably $5,000 to $6,000 per location. Again, ballpark, I mean, like I said, I think I've said before, Phil could probably research that and get it dialed in, in a matter of half hour to an hour, but again, it's readily available material. You could,
I mean, going back to the request, the original request, the issue, I mean, one of many issues that we have is we're looking to start the main stretch, potentially of phase 2 within 2 weeks. So they're going to have to either stop, re-engineer, get MoDOT and East West Gateway approval to add humps, bumps, chicanes, medians. We've already been told medians are really not viable for that stretch due to the turns in and out and the short, the relatively short span there. So how many options and how many options are actually going to be, again, I don't know what we're trying to solve yet because we don't have a problem yet. And we don't know.
Well, you're
there's a
saying there's
problem.
not a problem. Residents
Well,
around there.
But we also have data to back up, statistically significant data to back up the actual speeds along that
Limited
corridor.
data for a few days. And sometimes it's stale data. I think residents would
We've
like
done
to
it,
have something
we've done it
done.
multiple times though, over the years. So this wasn't just a couple days once, it was multiple days,
We can
multiple
agree to
times over
disagree.
multiple years.
It
But
was,
this is fact, this isn't, you can disagree on the perception, but this is a fact. Of
the last
data
one
that
was 5
provided.
days, 10,000, over 10,000 cars, 34 mile an hour average. That was the last data collection. And that was 10,000 cars in 5, almost 6 days.
So are we saying we're not going to ask to what that cost might be? HR Green, they were talking to Joel and I when they were working on Stump Road, and they said all kinds of changes have been made. So I don't know why this seems like such a big deal that we want to explore traffic calming measures. The ambulance and EMS people are concerned about it. The residents are concerned about it. I understand that some people might not be concerned about it.
They're concerned about speeding, or they're going to be concerned about driving their ambulances over humps and bumps and,
They're concerned about people speeding on Stump Road and the safety aspects of that.
okay. I mean, again, I think as Tom mentioned, there are things we can do, and this is not the last opportunity to do it. But what I can tell you is we don't know what and where the issues are. We don't really know what choice. And when we talk about traffic calming, there's a whole kinds of things that are traffic calming that we would build into this. And that is re-engineering the street. Could be re-engineering the grade. Could be, there's a lot of things that are going to be changing about that. And it does still have to get approved by East West Gateway or MoDOT. But first and foremost, I will need you as a board to authorize me to engage someone at a cost of, I don't know how much, just to start exploring this. And then, once we choose to go down that road, we're going to have to pay for actual engineering. We'll have to have KJ Understall put this project on hold, and we will engineer it, get it approved, and then get the new specs out to KJ Understall, and we'll install whatever traffic calming measures that the board so chooses. We can do that, that's fine. I just need that direction and that approval for money.
So, well, I don't think an approval for a blank check is going to come. When you did engage them and ask for budgetary numbers, what was their response? We can't give that because we don't know what we're solving for, or?
That's the biggest
Well,
problem. I
is
mean, again, we don't really know what we're asking them for, other than they have done a lot for us
Mhm.
and not got paid. And I think they're at this point done with not getting paid.
Okay, so did they say what it would cost for them to put together a budgetary estimate?
No, we're gonna have a conversation tomorrow. Dan and I are gonna have a conversation tomorrow about what that will look like. I was hoping to have something, but I honestly don't think he knows. We don't really know what we're asking him to build. We're not asking, it'd be different if we're asking him to build a hump, a bump, a chicane, or median. Again,
Yeah,
this has all
I
been- this
get
has all
that,
been very-
but what I would expect them to say, and what I would say if I was in their position is, okay, that'll be X number of dollars an hour, whatever their standard hourly rate for an engineer or an estimator or salesperson
Well, I can give you
would
what
be.
that is, but
Okay. Whenever we spoke about this before, it was, well, we're going to talk to them tomorrow. Don't worry about an RVA. Don't worry about taking any action to push this forward, because we're going to talk to them tomorrow, and by the next time we'll have some information for you. I'm concerned that this is going to be so rolled so long that it becomes moot by the end of it because the road's already done. I know they're already pouring concrete today.
I mean, this is something that should have been decided a year or 2 years ago. I mean,
Residents have been asking for traffic calming.
but I'm not the decision maker on this. So I understand the residents have been asking, but this board could have made that direction to say, we're just gonna do it. We'll spend an extra 200,000.
Yeah, the problem is that
Really?
the board doesn't know, and we rely on the expertise of city staff and
But-
guidance. So hold on. And so that had been asked before. Now we've had this conversation. Frankly, I was left fairly satisfied with the conversation that we had. But if it is something that the board wants to take up again, I think it needs to be done in earnest.
I would suggest directing the city attorney or city engineer, who we have a contract with, to come up with scenarios that we then can direct HR Green to give us an engineered, an estimate for engineering cost to do.
Mhm.
At that point, and tomorrow we will tell KJ Understall that this will be on hold next in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, as we're hoping, where they'll move to phase 2, that we will have to wait until we've made a decision as to whether or not we're going to do or not do something along that stretch between Sancho Circle and Whispering Pines. That would be the way that it should probably be approached. He's been part of the conversations. Unfortunately, every conversation, I can tell you HR Green really doesn't want to go down this road because they don't have a lot of direction. Quite frankly, city staff hasn't been given a lot of direction, except for we have been giving you data. We've been giving you,
Yeah.
when you ask for expertise, we've been giving that
Yeah.
to you. And now, if it's not an issue of whether or not the data says it, if it's just
We're not
This
talking
is
about
what- this
speed
is what-
data.
well, if this is about calming residents' perceptions, then it's not about
Okay.
that for
So
us anyway. Go ahead and-
we are beating a dead
Yes.
horse now because we can keep having that same conversation over and over again. The last time, it wasn't last meeting, it was the meeting before.
I
that
haven't
this
been
was
here
brought
for
up,
the last
correct?
2 meetings, by
So,
the way.
okay, so it's been
So you
a
and I
little,
didn't have this
hold
conversation.
on,
Well, let me just make sure I'm
No,
clear
hey,
about that.
okay. We're not gonna have arguments between the city administrator and alderman up here when we're trying to talk.
Well,
Look,
hold on,
look.
let me suggest this. Tom has said he's been
Yeah.
involved in this
I'd
kind of
like to
stuff
finish
for
what I
a
was saying.
Why
and say-
can't we
Well, let me
just
finish my
do
statement
this-
unless you have a point of order. Do you want me?
Finish
do you want
your
me to finish
statement.
Okay. My problem is, and I'm trying to figure out when it was that we brought this up, when Alderman Johnson said that he'd like to bring it back. And if it was 6 weeks ago, I thought at that meeting, We had given the direction to go and do exactly what you're suggesting now, which was have the city engineer get involved, make a recommendation, and ask for budgetary numbers based on that. 6 weeks later, hearing that that didn't happen, and now we're going to start doing that and delay the project, that concerns me.
No, you're not correct with your assumptions here, because what he's saying is doing something after the road is paved. You're saying doing something, building it into the construction of the road.
I am referring back to
That's-
the conversation that we had at the
Yes.
last time, which at the end
Was
of that
building
conversation.
something into the
Yes.
construction of the road.
Yeah, there was going to
Okay.
be a meeting with
We
HR.
brought that up, to HR Green at that last meeting.
Mhm.
They said, let us get back with you,
Okay.
okay?
But what
Then
James is saying
this-
is in that meeting, they said, we don't know what you're trying to build, and we need more
That's what they
specificity,
came
right?
back with now.
Okay.
That was their latest that they just
Okay,
came back with.
so timeline-wise, that conversation, and then they came back
Right.
what, last week or something with, we need more specificity.
This matter came up when I was not here 2 meetings ago.
Okay,
I followed up with HR Green, as the mayor said, at that meeting. That is the construction project
The
manager
day
people for
after that
HR Green.
meeting.
which is appropriate.
Correct, but he's not the engineer, he's not the construction engineer, he's not the one who designed and engineered this. Dan Shane was out of town for like almost 2 weeks, it seemed like. At which time, when we followed back up, I think he got back last week, his response was, I don't really know what they want, I don't really know what you want. I said, I'm not sure either, except for there's an interest in permanent traffic calming measures. There was a conversation about a previous unpaid bill that they forwarded on to us and asked that if they were going to undertake this, that they would have some sort of a change order agreement to be paid for it. I said, well, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that.
Okay,
That being said, we don't have an engagement with them. We do have a permanent engagement with our city engineer. And at this point, if we're gonna move this ball forward, we're going to need to have the city engineer try to put all of this into something that then HR Green can either design, or cost out, or I'm sure Tom can probably cost it out. But HR Green would eventually have to design, and then KJ Understall would have to be able to find a way to alter the plans and do it before they get too far down the road.
okay, then I'll say, based on that explanation, then we shouldn't even be talking to them. We should ask the engineer to cost it out. That seems in line with what we asked at that meeting.
So may I interject?
Yeah.
So if you're telling me this is what you want to do, and we want to try to get something permanent installed, we'll figure out a way to make it happen.
To be
Now,
clear, and I want to be corrected by anyone who doesn't hold this view, it's not necessarily that it's what we want to do. We just want the information on what it would
Okay.
look like if.
So what I could do is take a look at the existing plans. I plan on coming to the meeting tomorrow, as usual, the monthly meeting, and come up with a sketch and some locations where I think it might be best suited to have potentially 2 speed humps installed. And my initial thoughts are, on either side of the significant low point where they're not blocking a driveway or a entrance, or where they're starting to come down the hill. You don't want it at the top of the hill. That's not going to do any good. We'll call it the third points of the project. And come up with a sketch and say, here's where we want, give them the dimensions, the criteria. And the smart way to do it is to give it to KJ Undersall and say, price this. Because my estimate, HR Green's estimate, means very little when it comes time. I mean, an estimate is an estimate.
For the actual change order, yeah.
An actual construction cost from KJ Undersall, and they'll have to consider their timing of when they're doing different phases and all that, and let them think about that, and that's what we'll discuss tomorrow morning. And if they choose to accept that mission, they don't have to probably, though. I will tell you, some contractors, they may or may not say, yeah, we'll price that for you. You may say, I really don't want to bother. We won't have the complete you will do this, because he already has a scope, he has a schedule, he has days counting against his schedule. So there's factors
Yeah.
but that's what we'll start and do. And my time, obviously I will keep it as minimum as I can, but just to try to get you some results of something you can chew on. Maybe if we can get that before the next board meeting for you to decide, that would be the goal.
So quick
If it was an
follow-up.
asphalt road, I would say, boy, it's not that complicated, but the fact that it's a concrete street does make it more complicated from the standpoint of, you have to tie in the grades, or asphalt speed humps are added to asphalt roads. It's not uncommon, so there's a little more
Is it-
challenges.
Would it be standard for them to charge us to provide that cost estimate from your sketch?
Maybe not. I mean, it just depends on how the relations are going and how things, if they're making money currently and so many factors related to that. And if they do, okay, if he says, well, I'm gonna have to charge you for that, well, then James and I can certainly negotiate that with them maybe a little bit tomorrow. And again, I will tell you that the federal share of all this money is run out. So, I think we would probably, at this point, probably have to just run it by the MoDOT rep that will be there tomorrow to see if it's something that we can add to the project as a scope, because it's not going to be participatory anyway. So as long as we can adjust the scope to accommodate this from a safety/scope change, they may not care as much because they're not going to participate in the cost of it anyway.
Okay, for the record, this is my suggestion, that we defer this until after the project is finished and get more data. As far as, in the 10 years that I've been alderman, we've had almost every road project, people claiming they wanted some kind of speed abatement on Bates Road, on Hanley Road, on McClure, on everywhere we added a third lane, it was going to be a raceway, okay? It never turned out to be that way. So if we collect data after it's done, we can put abatements in after it's finished. We're not,
You could, sure.
yes.
And
And it's not
I've
saving
stated
us,
that as
it's
well.
not saving us a whole lot of money by going through the process right now.
It's gonna
So
cost you.
it's gonna actually cost us more.
Yeah,
So,
we're getting close to time, so I'm gonna move to request that the city engineer do what he has just stated he would do to get some cost estimates with the minimal amount of time that he can, and no additional cost to the city from the contractor. If the contractor refuses to provide that estimate at no cost, then report back to the Board of Aldermen.
We got additional costs right now with our city engineer. So we got a limit on how many hours he will spend?
Well, my motion stands where it is. I don't want to amend it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hear none, motion is approved. James, you got anything else?
Yes, so wanted to make sure, a couple of quick things. The fireworks, I know we didn't have that on the work session items for discussion, but we do normally talk about that as far as reviewing the entire board agenda. I wanted to make sure that the board was okay with the idea, well, not the ideas, but the way it was all brought together and then memorialized here in this bill, Bill 2425. I know that there was a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts. I know our city attorney tried very hard to kind of capture all of that and place that into this bill. So just before we get to that this evening, I didn't know if there was any thoughts, concerns, questions about that.
Isn't that basically the county guidelines?
No,
No?
not necessarily. So, couple of things worth noting. I would say to the extent the permit for display fireworks, which are the big professional fireworks, very likely they are consistent with, because they are based off of ICC fire code, which the city has adopted. This is a national standard permitting process for display fireworks. So the other thing that the board asked be added is a consumer firework display permit outside of the normal fireworks season, which is July 2nd to 5th. This would allow for a certain number of permits, and I believe I put it in here as 12. Nothing particularly magic about that, but I kind of put it as like 3 to 40. But it would allow people to come in and get consumer fireworks permits for displays of consumer fireworks outside of the normal season, but only on Fridays and Saturdays.
That was consumer, like, so you're saying they have to be a license?
No, they do not have to be
They
licensed,
don't
they
have-
could be consumer fireworks, so anything you can buy at a tent.
Really?
Cool.
That's what the direction, I understood the direction of the board to be. I'm incorrect.
I thought that anything outside the normal dates for being authorized would be by a license
And we have that as well.
thing.
That's for the specific fireworks that require a state license.
So for Del Mar Gardens, how would,
That would be a display license
Right.
permit that would be under the ICC.
So would there be any issue with removing any kind of permit or any possibility of someone firing off consumer fireworks outside of the July 4th window?
oh, it's not just-
Do we remove the consumer fireworks permit?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's fully prohibited?
So any individual without a permit cannot do it.
Mhm.
that's-
Right now, the way it's drafted, and my understanding this was the request, I think it was Alderman Winneman who asked it, can we have a consumer firework permit? That can, if an HOA wants to have a fireworks display, they
Yeah, I
can.
think that was back and forth. We had a
It's
pretty
right,
good
and-
discussion about that, but
Right, and the idea was I would send you what we could do, and then
Yeah.
you could come back and say what you might want
And
to do.
my thoughts on that is no, that it's outside the scope of the normal 4th of July
Yeah.
thing, that if you wanted to have a display outside of that, it would have to be like a licensed pyrotech to be able to put on that display, whether it's
Can we-
consumable or non-consumable.
That's fair.
can we have a motion to amend that here, or does that need to be done in the regular?
What I would say, because it's going to have further reaching impacts than just saying take that out,
Okay.
is to direct me to remove that in here as part of this discussion, and then postpone it.
What are the other aldermen's feelings on that?
I say we go ahead and postpone it, let them redraft. I mean, is everybody
Yeah.
in
No, I agree.
agreement
I
of
agree.
what I'm saying? I
No, I
mean,
agree.
You probably don't.
I mean, anything outside of the 4th of July area, you know, whether it's consumable or a gigantic display, it has to be a licensed pyrotech to put that display on and get the permit.
I'm not in favor of doing it outside those dates. I mean, people are gonna celebrate every single little bitty thing, and we're gonna have fireworks going off, at 12 other times of the year.
And
So
that's-
would you?
That's what I
That's,
thought he was saying.
that's another point I want to bring up also. I want to get us
Yeah.
focused on one thing first, okay?
Would you support?
The other point
sorry.
is I don't see given another 12 times a year. At the max I would go would be, gosh,
Well, why
I
give
don't
any?
know.
We don't have to give any, so
No,
why
we
give
don't.
any? I mean, first of all, the timing from 10 a.m. Who needs to shoot off fireworks starting at 10 a.m.? Nobody.
Yeah.
It's not even dusk at 10 a.m.
yeah.
So
11 p.m. is way
That's-
too late
To me,
too.
that time needs to be changed no matter what on any ordinance.
Could you put in there like dusk,
You have to define it.
define it?
Okay,
So,
6
Can,
o'clock.
can you tie it to
so
sunset?
6 PM to 10 PM, I think would be,
Plenty.
Yeah, Can you tie it to, instead of saying dusk, can you say tie it to sunset, which is a,
So many
Specific day.
hours after sunset. And obviously, the
Yeah.
idea is that it would be dark.
is Is that what you guys were getting to?
Yeah.
by
I,
saying
I
dusk?
would just say 6 to 10 PM.
Yes.
Okay.
Just make it right, window right there, 6 to 10 PM.
And then I can tell you, it says here under number 2, on section 212.040, on that section, it says, let me find it again. Let's see, it is a risk of harm or danger that may be exacerbated by the discharge of fireworks, such as being in close proximity to a gas station, open field, forested area, or other similar flammable location. Well, that's exactly where Delmar Gardens is displaying those fireworks, is in an open, dry field. So, you know, they've already, for years, gone against one of our ordinances, I believe, or one of our,
That is a current proposed provision for the consumer firework permit. So
Okay.
it's not something that exists.
okay, well, then we need to be careful with that, because then we cannot allow someone to set off fireworks in an open field if it specifically says that they cannot do that, correct?
Well, what this says, and again, with the direction that I'm gathering is I'm going to receive, that whole section is going to disappear.
Okay,
That language will go away. And again, the idea there was, in terms of granting a permit, I was adding safety considerations that could be factored by the city administrator, and ultimately, or his designee, would ultimately be responsible for issuing the permit, make a determination if the permit is appropriate.
okay,
There are, however, in the ICC fire code for displays type permits, which are professional fireworks displays, they have all sorts of safety regulations on them. I mean, very detailed safety regulations, way beyond this. The idea that the direction I was given is for a consumer discharge display, keep it simple. So I kept it simple and easy to read with those provisions. For display fireworks, it's not simple. It's very complicated and
Right.
intentionally so. But again, this would be removed entirely.
okay. The only other thing that I saw in here was the fact that 15-year-old kids can shoot off these fireworks with no adult supervision.
And that's currently in the code.
I know.
With insurance.
So, but yet, I think somewhere else in here, it also
I see
says
eight-
that
18.
18 being adult. So I'm not real comfortable with some of the 15, 13, 14-year-old, 16-year-old kids that I've seen in my neighborhood shooting off fireworks without adult supervision. I think, you know, we have to make parents more responsible for kids. And fireworks are dangerous. And I just think we need to step up what we're doing to prevent someone else from getting hurt, or a house from burning down, or a yard from catching a fire, or whatever. Especially since, you know, our houses are close together. They're not acres apart.
So just so I'm clear, is the direction in terms of 212.030 B and C is to change 15 to 18?
That-
Or actually, it would be 17, so it's 17.
Okay. I mean, that would be my preference, but then there's 5 other people sitting
No,
up
I
here.
Well, I
so-
understand, I just wanted to
Yeah,
boil it
no,
down
that's
to.
that would be
Yeah,
my
I don't have a
preference.
problem with that.
I think that's pretty sound.
I mean, I don't have a problem with fireworks, especially if they're done by a licensed professional. That's my biggest point. I don't want any kind of displays done by somebody that's not a licensed pyrotech to be shooting things off. That's my big concern. And What?
Fireworks?
Well, consumer fireworks, I mean, only during the period of 4th of July.
Okay.
I mean, that consumer, well, that's when we issue the permits for the tents, and that's, you know, if we're gonna sell them, I think we ought to have them within the time regulations of the 4th of July, which is what, the 2nd to 5th or something? Right, 2nd to the 5th. Now, talking about the number of times during the year, 12, I think, was a lot.
And I just threw that number out.
It's one a
for
month,
discussion, so whatever you all
basically
like to do
12
is
would
fine.
be one a month. I mean, but then you'd have,
At the same time, I'm worried that that will entice people to get on the ball and plan theirs early and maybe increase the number that's there if we put a number down. I may be off, but say there's 12, then people try to make the quota.
at the most, I would say 6, because 6 months out of the year, it's usually like winter
Yeah, that's
time
a
or
good
whatever.
point.
Well, you got New Year's. That would fall under that, when you wanted to do it on New Year's, which a lot of people do.
How many does the city do each year?
One
Just one?
Just one.
Friday.
But I mean, we could do the Prairie Day one without,
We'd fall under the same regulations if we did the Prairie Day.
We're not
We'd
really
fall under the
subject to
same
our rules in
regulations.
that regard.
Okay,
that's what I'm
so
saying.
we made a decision, John, you know where we're going with
No.
this? You're gonna rewrite this?
I'd say 6, what do you think?
I think 6. I like that.
Why don't we
regular.
go with 6 for now? Okay,
Then the guy come up here
I
and
think
do
we
it.
gave you enough changes.
Is everybody okay with going with 6 versus
Yeah.
12?
But
I think for the state, we make that person give their information, but I think the permittee is still like this is Scotland Gardens. Like, that was a permittee, they had to have a license. to do this.
Okay.
So,
Just so I'm clear and have actual, just formal direction from the board, I'm going to ask for a motion. Before that, I do want to ask one question. Presumably, you still want to say
Yes.
except during 4th of July. So what I'm going to ask is for a motion to direct removal of the concept of consumer fireworks permits, to change the time frame for discharge of fireworks from 6 to 10 p.m., to limit the number of display fireworks permits to 6.
And the age,
And age.
And the
17.
age, thank you, from the age to 17 and
There a motion?
That's the motion.
You hear one? First?
Yes.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed?
I guess not. I'm a 3/4 aye.
You got that, Kim? 3/4? Okay. 5 3/4 to 1/4.
I don't know, that hand up was pretty high. Was that was going?
4 and
We'll see how it goes.
Oh, that's right, sorry. Keith's not here today.
We can, if it's bad, we can come back and change it again, you know? So,
Gotcha, I'll be first in line.
Okay, motion approves. You got it, John? All right. You have anything else, James? All right, I need a motion to adjourn the work session.
so move.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second by Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Work session is adjourned. Take a 5-minute break, get back, and get to the real business.
Thanks. I heard these came from you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The best in the business right there.
Yeah,
Who are these from?
My neighbor. Just, I'm telling you, take one and you'll be,
I just,
you'll be in
this
heaven.
is ridiculous, but I think we got some other good changes, so I'll let
I
it
got
go.
it. I know, but I mean,
Yeah, I'm good with it. You know,
Those were all for your property. What's the address?
Mhm.
What's your email address?
Oh,